We are back with another episode of the Dark Souls 2 Crit Play. I'm Woody, this is Kai,
Hi, good to be back.
and this time we are going to be talking about the second piece of DLC, the Crown of the Old Iron King. So, coming into this area, the Old Iron Keep is kind of like in a messed up fantasy location already, and I'm not even going to try to imagine where this is on the Dark Souls 2 world map. But this area is a large tower in the middle of another large lava plain.
It has some of the best scenery, I would say. It looks amazing from any angle.
It is a pretty cool area, visually speaking, especially the outside of it. I had the realization early on that, oh, this isn't actually snow, this isn't fire and ice, this is actually all ash that I'm walking on, and that's pretty neat.
Yeah, it is.
Because I do think this area, and again, Sunken King did this well too, where this area hits on kind of being a more unique setup than some of the areas from the base game. Because while places like Lost Bastille and Iron Keep are pretty cool, they are sort of stock video game landscapes. And this sort of manages to be, oh, it's kind of like a nice little twist on something, and sort of this entire giant tower is set up as a giant bonfire itself. So it's a cool nod to the series, and I think it's got some pretty good level design.
Yeah, I especially like how later on you can turn on the elevators, and that dramatically changes things. It changes how you think about the entire map, which was pretty cool. And getting to some of the hidden stuff that's a lot of it is deviously hidden. So
Yes, it's pretty well hidden. So the main story thrust of this DLC seems to be that at one point it was ruled by the old Iron King after he took it over from Ven. Nidalia, who is this DLC's version of Alana and Nishandra, your other Shard of Manus, presumably, comes looking for his power. Turns out he's already dead and is not there. She kind of gets super depressed and turns herself into the Ashen Idols. And, hangs out for a while. Raim comes along and gets corrupted by Nidalia, or rather accepts her corruption and becomes like her champion of evil. So this is kind of like the weird tower of like Dark Souls 2 depression.
yeah, there's almost nothing of consequence in terms of story here. It's all so isolated, dealing with characters that are so largely far removed from the core story. And like you said, the tower's abandoned as well. I kind of like that though. And thematically, it sets it apart from Sunken King, which was neat. So yeah, in terms of lore, I thought it was quite strong.
And I think there is something to be said too about exploring these areas that no one is really there or a part of, because these areas have that kind of overwhelming sense of isolation.
Yeah, which I like. I mentioned Tomb Raider before in the last DLC episode, but this is especially reminiscent of Tomb Raider because you play Tomb Raiders, like Tomb Raider 1. You play through the first like 4 levels of that game, which takes several hours, and you never meet any characters, and there are no cutscenes. And this kind of mirrors that, where you play through such substantial portions of the game, and you don't glean a whole lot of direct storytelling, which is par for the course for the series, but you also don't meet anyone, and you don't get any direct like mission statements after you start playing, which is kind of cool. So
Yeah, I would always compare these games to the earlier Metroid games of you are on a planet and you kill dudes until you kill the dude that makes you leave the planet. Overall, there are bits and pieces of this DLC that I think really look good. They kind of have a hard time coalescing a little bit, and I would say that is maybe my overall complaint with this piece of the DLC, is that while a lot of the individual parts of this DLC are pretty good, I feel like they're sort of off in their own little zones, and they don't really come together as much as they could have.
I think that's a pretty strong way of looking at it too. Yeah, I think the way it is paced. Actually, yeah, I think it comes down to the pacing. The pacing is not good.
Because, yeah, as you said, this area is kind of split up into, like, sort of 3 or 4 major sections. You have that upper part of the tower. You eventually get down to the main bonfire in the elevator room, and then there's the lower part of the tower from there, and then there's also the couple of towers off to the side, Alon's Memory, and Iron Passage. And it takes an oddly long time to get down to that elevator room, and I really feel like that's the point at which the DLC opens up and actually feels like a full area, like you're not just running from bonfire to bonfire.
Yeah, I agree. The area just feels kind of, I think, very linear, and I think that it's maybe too linear early on, because when you do finally open up a turn of the elevators, it's overwhelming with all the stuff you have to go back and check to do. It was kind of annoying, I think. Sunken King, the game gave you a lot of the freedom to discover shortcuts and do the puzzle elements, as soon as you start it. And then once I was able to open stuff up later on with key items or whatever, it made sense. Iron King is really rough in that it's like there's not much you can do in the first 45 minutes to hour or whatever, and then after that it's like, oh, by the way, now you have to basically go back through the areas you were already in, but like with an even finer comb.
And part of that is that the gimmick of this level is the smelter wedges and the ashen idols. It's kind of funny because that ends up not really being 100% essential to completion of this DLC.
Yeah. Only if you really want, I guess, the soul item, or the weapon from it.
And from what I understand, neither of the things you can get with that soul are really all that good.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to take over PvP, so...
But, anyway, the smelter wedges, because they're kind of interesting from a design standpoint, because they actually do a pretty good job at encouraging you to explore, because I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like it's probably a larger number of people in addition to just me. I assume those were going to be really important. And so, okay, I have to diligently go through this tower, kill every one of these ashen idols, and I assumed it was going to be one of those things where I have to collect every fragment of Nadalia's soul, and then that's going to be the boss.
Right, I was expecting something similar as well. Kind of a pleasant surprise that not only is that not the case, you don't even need all the souls.
So yeah, it's kind of funky in that it doesn't do that, but it's a really good excuse to try and make you explore areas. And it really kind of lends a nice design touch, because they can design sort of all these little set-piece encounters around the individual parts of that soul. So you can have the fight with Maldron the Assassin in the tower, you can have that weird little cursed hallway room, you can kind of have these side rooms and hidden rooms where you have to fight this big giant guy, and behind door number 2 there's a smelter wedge thing you have to kill, and it led to some nice little encounter designs.
Yeah, definitely. It makes you approach and play things differently, especially since each Ashen Idol will benefit enemies and, try and harm you in different ways, which is pretty cool.
I think they maybe could have highlighted the idea that your smelter wedges are limited, because they're not limited in the sense that you can obviously get enough to destroy all of the Ashen Idols no matter what, but they're limited in the sense that at different points of the DLC you have access to different numbers of them. And that becomes clear later on, such as if you run out of smelter wedges before you kill all the idols around the boss room.
That was actually... I got off lucky, because I managed to explore and find the extra 4 smelter wedges before I got to the boss room. So I didn't run into that issue. And I also didn't even find the last Ashen Idol I'd missed until after I had found the final smelter wedge in the memory of the old Iron King. But I can see how doing things in a particularly inconvenient order would be annoying.
Well, it's not so much that it's annoying, it's because I think that idea of these are really important items and you have to use them intelligently is a pretty cool idea, and it's an idea they could have played up, but you really only know about it in the DLC until you know that there is a certain number of smelter wedges, there's a certain number of Ashen Idols, and you can access those at a certain number of times.
Yeah.
Probably one of the best parts of this DLC, in my opinion, is actually something I'm really surprised I enjoyed as much as I did, which is the basic enemy design. This DLC has some really outstanding designs for just all of your basic respawn a million times enemies.
I thought they were okay. You had your standard undead knights with the axes and stuff,
Yeah,
and
those guys are boring.
you had a shit ton of NPC and Red Phantom Invader guys, and you have the lightning mages, which are pretty cool, and you have the possessed swordsmen folks, which were pretty rad. Probably the coolest new enemy, I think.
Yeah, because the skeleton warrior guys are. It feels like a very. We need to design a basic enemy for this level kind of thing. I kind of levied the same complaint at the Sanctum Knights, and I do think the Sanctum Knights were better than these guys.
Right.
But they're just so basic, and it's kind of one of those things. I feel like you really don't need to have a basic enemy. I feel you could have maybe done a variation or two on those possessed knights, because I would agree with you. Those are a really creative enemy design, and they're much different to fight than a lot of the stuff we saw in Dark Souls 2. They're really resistant to all different kinds of magic and everything. They're a threat at different ranges. They have kind of some funky attack strings, like their weird, like, rolling capoeira attacks when they're on the ground and stuff.
Oh, and the powder keg guys, my favorite new guys. I loved them.
I would almost hesitate to call them enemies, because I think they ended up helping me more than they ended up hurting me.
Oh, totally. Well, nonetheless, they're awesome additions, and I really liked what they added to certain encounters and how you would forge your strategy around their inclusion. I wish they were utilized maybe in one or two more rooms.
But the other enemy that we get here, that I like, if nothing else, more than just for the weirdly meta design, is the Iron Warriors, the guys with the giant clubs.
Yes.
Because their design is just completely done around you cannot strafe around them, because you will get messed up from their lava barfing shoulders.
Yeah, I think the way that they try and kind of counter that is pretty cool, in the same way that, trying to backstab one of the poisoned Sanctum Knights will probably poison you. So, the way they introduce really creative ways to counteract things that players try and utilize on like every enemy type is pretty neat, and I appreciated that.
It's one of those, I appreciate it, I just think it's funny how obvious that design is, like, looking at them, of just barfing clouds of lava out of their shoulders. Like, there's almost something slightly comical about it or something, of, like, just a giant fuck you.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But, you mentioned before, the Fume sorcerers. I really, really like these guys. These are probably some of my favorite enemies in the game.
Oh, wow.
Because they have such a complex moveset. They might have the most moves of anything in this game, because I think I've counted like 5 or 6 different moves they've got.
I don't know, man. The tiny golem guys with the spears, like in Dragonlight Castle, had a ridiculous amount of like attack animations.
That's true, they have attack animations, but I guess what I differentiate is these guys have a really wide variety of attacks. Because
Gotcha.
I think they have 3 different spells. They have a teleportation move where they'll try to teleport behind you and backstab you. They have an area of effect thing when you get close to them. They will buff their weapons when you get close to them. They have a whole string of dagger combos and stuff. They're just a really nice, like, satisfying enemy to fight, because so many enemies in this game don't really provide, like, a challenge one-on-one. And I wouldn't say these guys are hard to fight one-on-one, but they're fun to fight one-on-one.
Yeah, that's true. You definitely have to scale for like different kinds of factors, more factors than you would have to for most kinds of enemies in the game. So that's a good point.
And I like that they are a good combination of physical attacking and magic attacking, because I think that's kind of rare for enemies in the series. You usually kind of either get one or the other, where it's a mage that dies in 2 hits once you get close to it, or a big mean warrior that will only hit you at close range. And there's definitely a limited number of enemies that can do both. And then, of course, the other thing that I like about them is they have what is a very close to the original version of the mannequin masks from, like, the first trailer for Dark Souls 2.
Oh, yeah.
That
Can
got
you
changed
get their
because
armor?
they look like... Yeah, you can.
Okay, cool.
That, like, they changed because it apparently looks way too like the stupid masks in Naruto or something.
I've heard it was either Naruto or it was darker than black. I've heard both claims. I don't know which to believe, but yeah, I've heard it was anime controversy for some reason. So yeah.
But yeah, they do have pretty cool armor that you can get. And their daggers are actually pretty cool too. Because they have 2 different daggers and both of them are drops.
Oh, nice.
And the one, I believe, is just a generic dagger that does like lightning damage. But the other one ups your spell damage by 5%.
That's pretty good.
We had also mentioned a bit before Black Phantom NPCs. There are 3 Black Phantom NPCs in this DLC.
And approximately 0 of them are fun to fight.
Oh, I would completely disagree with that. We have Quicksword Rachel, Maldrone the Assassin, and the Prowlers. So, Quicksword Rachel is just kind of like it's a pretty standard fight. Like, I wouldn't say it's a horrible fight, but fighting in the dark at the bottom of that tower is kind of a cool little set piece thing.
Yeah, I suppose.
The Prowlers, I would agree, are not really fun to fight in and of themselves. I just really like the oh shit moment of when you kill the first one, and then you go to the stairs, and like 4 more of them spawn in front of you all at once.
Right.
That's kind of a cool moment.
It straddles the line between being like devilishly creative and infuriatingly annoying. So I appreciate it, but I did not necessarily have fun with it.
And then we have Maldrone the Assassin, which, if you're not up on your names of your invaders in this DLC, everyone, is the guy that invades you in the Tower Full of Curse and runs away from you once you knock his health down by half.
I have a vendetta against anyone who uses the Grand Lance, so I am immediately not a fan of him.
See, I really, really, really like this encounter. I like that they are incorporating very humanistic strategies into their enemy AI, and that it makes it a different encounter than just here is an enemy and he has a big shield and a weapon that does a lot of damage, don't get hit.
Yeah, that's true.
There are ways that you can approach this, because in this DLC, I will also note, there is an item, the Hollow Skin, which dramatically reduces the amount you get cursed by, almost to the point where you will not get cursed in this tower.
Yeah. Also, the seed of the giant tree will.
Yes, seed of a tree of giants. Yeah.
It is a practical item you can use while not playing online. That's kind of cool.
I could potentially see like thinking it's annoying that he's running away from you. I like it for the novelty of it.
Right, and obviously there are tactics to avoid it. You could just kill him quickly enough. You can use giant tree seed, or you can rush after him and you can deal with that bullshit.
But yeah, I just really like it because it's a nice, unique encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Then the final other enemy that we forgot to talk about before, too, that we get in this, that I actually think is another pretty good enemy type, is the Scorchers, which are the large, fat, exploding undead enemies.
Oh yeah, those guys are great.
They incorporate fire into their design really well, in that they get lit on fire and are in an area with these kind of funky torches that have oil all over the ground. It's kind of a fun thing from a design angle, because you don't really run around with a torch much in this game, because you don't need to. I mean, at least I don't, and I'm betting if you're familiar with this game, you probably don't need to either. But since this area is dark, you're a lot more likely to have a torch and to try to light these torches, and to notice that these guys react differently when they're lit on fire, and that they have a persistent lit on fire condition and their moves change and stuff.
Yeah, they can suicide, but they also become considerably more aggressive and dangerous.
Yeah, so it's quite, I like them as an encounter. It's definitely not an enemy that would be fun to fight, like, for an extended period of time. I wouldn't want to see these thrown all over this map. But as this sort of little instanced area, they make it different and cool.
Also, that room where they're all worshipping the iron smelter, that is pretty awesome, that room. I like it a lot. So
I wanted to touch, too, upon... There are a couple of like those good set pieces like that. That is definitely one of the coolest visual things in this level. And my probably biggest visual thing that I love in this area so much is the large elevator room going down with all of the giant suits of armor hanging by chains.
Mm-hmm. That is way cool looking.
I wish that room could be an entire area of the game. I want to see, like, a gutter-sized area where you have to navigate these giant suits of armor all standing around in the dark, and you have to like run across their arms and jump and stuff.
Maybe climb through them. Who knows?
Yes, I want to see cool stuff like that. That was a really cool area, and I just want to see more inventive and sort of creative visual areas like that. Even if it's not necessarily, super different level design, it's a good visual.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of the area design in this DLC was terrific.
Alright, so let's get into the boss fights of this DLC.